Let's talk water for a moment. This is one of those times when I get to remind you of the things that you already know about water. What do you already know about water? Think for just a little bit about what you already know about water. What do you know about ice? Sweating? When you take a glass of water and you fill it with water all the way, you just keep adding. You get to the rim, you just keep adding water. Can you keep adding water? Have you ever seen anything walk on water? Have you seen a rock skip on water? How does a plant drink? What do you know about water? Keeping this in mind, let's talk about water. The important terms associated with water that you have to remember are cohesion, adhesion, and surface tension. Cohesion is the sticking together of molecules of the same kind. And we talked earlier about the hydrogen bond, right? So hydrogens are very, very, really good. Like water is very good at that, right? So water molecules stick together really, really well. So they have a whole lot of cohesion. So they are, because they're sticking together, it's kind of hard to break them apart. Clinging to another substance, that's adhesion. Ad meaning towards, co meaning together. So this is actually where the Latin comes back in. Co means together, like a colleague, like a collaborate, a collegium, collegial. All of that means together. Whereas adhesion, adhere, sticking to. Now, the reason why water sticks to things, it's because water is slightly negatively and positively charged. So it'll stick to anything that is slightly negatively or positively charged. And surface tension, if something sticks together, it'll cause it to have surface tension. That's a thing, it's a feature. And then if you have surface tension, insects can walk on water. The other place where it's important that water sticks together is siphoning. Have you all ever siphoned something? When you siphon something, you rely on the fact you couldn't siphon. Have you ever, if you were to try to siphon um, beads, you could do it with just the right size um, tubing, but you couldn't do it like water. Right, with water, like the fact that water can be sucked up with a straw is because the water molecules stick together. And so this is the same idea of plants. This is how plants drink water. Trees, the way they drink water is the water evaporates from the top, and then from the bottom it gets sucked up. And this only works because the water molecules stick to each other all the way up on the tree. There's always a little bit of physics associated with biology. And so, one of the things that you have to remember about physics, or one of the things that I have to remind you of, is that when when elements change their phases, like from one phase into another, from like the solid to a liquid, from a liquid to a gas, right? When those during those phase changes, energy is required for that phase change, and that energy has to come from somewhere. And so when water or sweat evaporates from your body, it turns from a liquid into a gas. And that evaporation, that turning from a liquid to a gas, requires energy. And this energy takes the heat away. This energy is being utilized, so the heat is turned into the energy. So this is why this cools you down. That's what evaporative cooling is. Another magical thing about water is that it is one of the only few elements where the liquid is less dense than water. Is one of the other important thing about water is that the solid is less dense than the liquid. That is not normally true. In most cases of chemicals, if you have a solid, it is heavier than the equivalent liquid. Water, that is not the case. And that's a good thing, right? Because since ice is lighter than liquid water, um, it floats. And so it can insulate what's underneath. If ice didn't float but sank, think about what would happen in the winter with lakes and that kind of thing. Another important characteristic of water is that it's a great solvent. It's a great solvent because of its slightly charged nature. Um, since it is slightly charged, it can interact with any kind of bond that is also slightly charged. And if you think about the fact that in order to be not slightly charged, every partner in every bond of whatever molecule you're talking about have to be extremely agreeable bunch of chaps. And the odds of everybody being agreeable sort is pretty low. So water is probably going to find a place to find a charge or to find a place to attack and stick to or whatever, um, for most things. Um, and that is evidenced by the amount of things that are soluble in water. So anything that's soluble in water, basically, what being soluble in water means is that it can be surrounded by water molecules so that it's basically suspended within the water molecules. And that's what that image shows. And the reason why fat does not dissolve in water is because fat is not charged. Fat is uncharged. The reason why fat is hydrophobic is it doesn't have any charged parts to it. So there's no place for the water to get to it and attack it. Last but not least, we're going to talk about pH. So what the pH is a description of the relative concentration of hydroxy, which is OH minus, and hydroxy ions and protons, which is the H pluses. If you stick those together, it's H2O, right? So H2O, when H2O breaks apart, it breaks apart into H plus and OH minus. And so um, the bully nature of oxygen every once in a while makes this happen, that an electron just gets snatched all the way, and a poor little electronless hydrogen starts floating around. Depending on who else is around, depending on what else is around, um, more or fewer hydrogens or hydroxy ions are going to be floating around in the solution. And so in acidic solutions, you have a lot of extra protons. And in basic solutions, you have a lot of hydroxy ions. Examples of basic solutions are like your household bleach, your household cleaner, um, your your pure water, and healthy things, ish, are neutral. And then battery acid, that's your acidic things. Your lemon juice are reasonably acid. Your gastric juices are quite acidic. Vinegar is an acid. Tomato juice is acidic. So this shows you a progression of more and more acidic and more basic. And in your body, there's a lot of places where buffers are at play that cause your certain areas of your body to remain at certain pH levels. And this matters. So, for example, the fact that your stomach is at a pH of 1 or 2 um, is not an accident. That's on purpose. That's on purpose.